I've been called on to do another story for you. This one is from Betty Mae Jumper. She's a Seminole, and the book it's collected from is called Legends of the Seminole. And it's an explanation of why the possum has no hair on her tail. Now, you all know what a possum looks like, right? Right? Like a big, furry rat. But she didn't look that way originally. She had beautiful, long, flowing white hair on her tail. She walked around. She swished her tail. She admired it. She thought that she was the most beautiful animal in the forest. All the other animals wanted to teach Possum a lesson. And they agreed that if anyone had an opportunity to teach her a lesson, he or she should. So one day Possum was walking around. She was admiring her tail, just swishing it. Ah, she said, "My tail is just so beautiful. I wonder what I could do to make it more beautiful." Rabbit heard her, and he came up and he said, "Oh, Possum, if you take some of this Spanish moss off this tree and wrap it around your tail and leave it overnight, when you unwrap it in the morning, your tail will be more beautiful." Possum, she says, "I'm no dummy. If I leave that moss on my tail for one night, and my tail will be more beautiful, then what will it be like if I leave it for a week? It will be terrific." And so she did. And when she unwrapped the moss from her tail, after a whole week, there was not a hair left on her tail. And that is why to this day, the possum has no hair on her tail. Are you all going to give me a high sign? You're ready? Stall. Stall. Oh. Well, can I tell you another story? All right. I hope this isn't too long. Well, there is another version about how the possum lost her hair on her tail. This is a little bit longer. This one was collected also by Zora Neale Hurston and is in her folklore collection called Mules and Men. Now, you'll recognize this story, a fellow in this story, because his name in this folk story is Nora, but you will have heard of him as Noah. And you know exactly what happened. God told him it was going to rain for 40 days and 40 nights. He must build a big ark, beautiful ark, and he must take 2 of every kind of creature onto the boat. And so he did. But one of those creatures was Miss Possum. And this possum, too, had that long, silky white hair on her tail. She thought that she was just so beautiful. Back, she said, back. Everybody stay back, don't touch me. Space, I need space. As she walked up onto the ark. Well, she looked around at that crowded ark. Imagine it, 2 of every kind of creature on that ark. She went, "Oh, time for some beauty rest." And she curled up in a corner of the boat and went to sleep. In the meantime, they got all of the other animals, all of the food loaded, all of old Nora's families, which included his sons and their wives, and it started raining. They closed up the boat. There was finally enough water. The boat started floating, and imagine the pandemonium on that boat. Animals and food everywhere. How do we figure this out? So old Nora called his sons together, and he said, "We need to come up with a plan so that everybody gets food and everybody gets rest and we have some semblance of order on this boat." So they made some chore charts. Any of y'all ever done chores at home? Yeah. Well, you know, Monday somebody washes the dishes or that sort of thing. Well, they made that all up, and every animal was assigned his or her task, including Miss Possum, who was still asleep. Well, it went pretty well. After about the third day that they were on the boat, everything was taken care of. Everybody had a place to sleep, and it got cleaned up. Everybody had something to eat, and it got cleaned up. And suddenly, it was that afternoon time on the boat. And I know you've had afternoon times like this when you're tired of reading, and there's nothing good on TV, and your electronic equipment is, what did the other guy say? Not what you were interested in. And that afternoon just stretches and stretches in front of you. And so old North, he calls his son Ham, and he said, Ham, he said, before this here boat got up on the water, you played a mighty fine banjo. I wish you'd get that banjo out and entertain the critters. And Ham said, oh, Daddy, I'm sorry. He said, you know, in all the rush to get two of every kind of creature onto the boat, all the food and everything, he says, I plumb forgot my banjo, and it's down somewhere under all that water. But if I had me a cigar box, I could make a banjo. And old Norris says, well, son, you know, come to think of it, I think I packed the seeds and the other small food for the rodents in a cigar box, and they've probably eaten through one by now. Why don't you go to the storeroom and check? And Ham did, and he came back, he was holding it up, and he said, Daddy, I got me a cigar box, now I just need me some strings. And old Nora said, I don't know what you're going to use for strings, but I'm going to tell you something, son. You just go all around this boat, and if you can find something on this boat that you can use for strings, why, you have my permission to get it. And so Ham started looking. He looked high, and he looked low, and suddenly he spied, do you remember who's sleeping over there? Miss Possum. And he quietly went over, and without disturbing her beauty sleep, he plucked every hair off her tail. Now, we're not sure exactly how he fashioned those hairs into strings for a banjo. Maybe he twisted them, maybe he braided them like my hair. But he soon fastened them to that cigar box, and he started picking. Can you hear that banjo picking? And the animals, they started getting into it. It was sounding real good. They started clapping their hands. Come on, yo. And stomping their feet. See those feet? And they made a lot of noise. And they woke up Miss Possum. What is that horrible noise? Oh, how can anybody get some beauty sleep around here? And then she looked down and she saw there was not one hair left on her tail. What has happened to my beautiful tail? So she carefully rolled it up and held it tight to her body so no one would see, and she went to find old Nora. Well, it was sounding pretty good, just like it did here a few minutes ago, you know, clapping and everything, music going, and she walks up to old Nora and she says, oh, Nora, something terrible has happened. And Nora says, Possum, I haven't seen you for a couple of days. In fact, I have some chores here that you were supposed to be helping with. Oh, Nora, who cares about chores? Look at my tail. Oh, it doesn't seem that you have that beautiful hair left on your tail, do you? No, Nora, what are you going to do about it? I think you could have done something about it, because if you had been away and if you had done your chores, then you'd probably still have that hair on your tail. So that is why to this day, possums have no hair on their tails. To this day, possums